Today we had Christian Luthi on. We talk about our relationship growing up. We grew up together, went to church together, and we both ended up down in Nashville together to do music, and then transitioned into real estate together, get to work together on that front. And Christian talks about his journey as an artist, as well as how this whole time that he was being an artist was doing real estate related things that eventually led him to get his real estate license. It's a good one.
True Renaissance man. Don't miss this one.
Christian Luthi, welcome to Backstage Agents, my friend.
Good to be here.
It's good to see you, man. It's been a hot minute, and it's always fun running into you in Nashville because we actually grew up together.
Yes.
And somehow ended up in Nashville, Tennessee, both in music and then both years later going into the craziness of the real estate world. So
yeah.
Walk me through your background growing up in Wisconsin. What was that like? How did you get into music?
Okay, yeah. I started playing drums when I was 6, and that was my first instrument. Then I started playing cello in 4th grade, then upright bass. I was like the shortest kid that could ever like carry around an upright bass. Mm-hmm. And then just started to navigate like what do I actually want to do? And I started to play a lot of drums through middle school, and then of course you got to learn acoustic in high school because you got to spoon the ladies and figure that out.
You got to play slow dancing in a burning room.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, totally worshipped like Maroon 5, Jason Mraz,
Bodies of Wonderland,
John Mayer, yeah, all that. And I guess we met in church. We grew up in the same area, but we didn't go to high school together. But I had no idea what this city was until it was way later on. I think it was just I went to school for music, and then I just thought I needed a change of pace.
Yeah. I remember. Because you went to UW-Madison, right?
Yes.
For school. And we also had another mutual buddy, Taylor Davis, songwriter in town.
Gotta give Davis a shout out.
Gotta give Davis a shout out.
Yeah.
And he came down to Nashville.
Yeah.
And did he have anything to do with putting the bug in your ear? Because you guys lived together for a while.
I don't know how did he figure out that like Belmont was the spot? Because for us, I don't know, it was never discussed, and we were in touch. But I was going to school for vocal performance, and then also business, and was like, what am I gonna do? I don't want to be a teacher. This is not my MO. And I'm like, Davis looks like he's having a blast. So I'm just checking him out in Nashville, and I'm like, man, after a couple years up there, I was just like, what I am pondering getting out of Wisconsin. I don't know. At that point, I was saying earlier, I'm like, thinking about what do we do? Do we go to LA? Do we go to New York? And I'm like, well, let's at least start somewhere where I have one homie. And Davis is just very serendipitously we have a room open, and I was like, I'll be there. And I was there in 10 days. I think I made the call to withdraw from school. I remember going to the advisor's office and being like, is it cool if I leave? Do you guys even care? And the school was so big, it was they're like, no, just I don't know, get out of here. And I was like, all right, okay, I'm out.
Good meeting.
Yeah, it was I was like, so you don't, you literally don't. I was like, I expected her to be try to sell me back into it, and that was just not the case. And I was like, well, it's probably not really the type of school for me, not to talk down on UW, because obviously had a blast, but it was I grew up in a tiny town, and that experience was so massive. And so even when I heard about Belmont, I was like, I want to come down and check it out. And I was like, well, maybe I'll like apply. And then I saw the price tag and I was like, nah.
You were one of those guys who, unlike me, you made the smarter decision where you just started hanging out around Belmont.
Yeah.
So you got to hang out with all the people and get all the benefits from that.
Yeah.
But you don't have the student debt associated with Belmont. So
yeah, I made my whole like crew from that school. You know, I think that there was just such a culture of it wasn't just music. Obviously people were there for nursing and a million other things, but those were my quote unquote college years without it being like, I mean, I guess without the tuition. But I went to a lot of like lectures and a lot of recitals and a lot of parties. And it was great. Yeah. So I was super thankful. Like, I wouldn't have ended up here. And I say that with Davis, and also because we grew up in the church. Mm-hmm. So it's like, well, because I went to church, then I met Davis, that was my one roommate that I was like, okay, it's cool, I can go there and hang for a bit. So
and I remember I followed you guys down like 2 years later, and you and Davis would always come up to Belmont and pick me up, and then I'd go and stay at your guys' house, and we would hang and we would party, and then you guys would drive me back to campus the next day. Those were very fond memories. You guys were both like, do not get caught in the Belmont bubble. You got to come and hang out with us.
And that's cool. I mean, like, that's the thing too. It's like, you can't tuck down in any sort of circle. I think I think the incredible thing, like even leading into real estate and finding this, is like finding your own way. Mm-hmm. Like it's funny to like, what can you go to school for without like just straight baptism by fire? Like, and I learned that like growing up. Like, I mean, I guess small like segue, it's like my pops was in pharmaceutical sales, but he also still built a ton of homes on the side and like laid brick and block and whatever. And so I learned that I think it's important to wear a couple different hats.
Yeah. I've started referring to it as being a professional floater in life. Like, you just kind of float around and you walk through whatever doors are open at the time, and you
jump through the window.
Or jump through the window and force some doors open, and then figure out that maybe that's not what you were supposed to be doing.
And ask questions. It's like, I think just the education you can get from a small conversation with a stranger is just crazy. Mm-hmm. And I learned that, obviously, like we all learn that, like in music, you're like, if you're humble and you communicate with the right people, you can learn a lot just by being in the right room. Mm-hmm. And that translates just like throughout life. I think it's been like super cool just to really know that, like, I don't think at any point you have all the answers. No. there's nothing where I'm like, even though you're like, bro, you want to do a podcast? And I'm like, yeah, I'm super excited. But I'm like, I know a few things, but that's it.
I think Dan's got a little bit more wisdom than both of us, and he would also tell you that he does not have the answers.
That's his nice way to call me old.
Yeah.
I'm offended.
But dude, so you came down to Nashville, followed Davis down. Did you have a plan when you got here, or was it one of those things you hopped in your car and you're like, I'm just gonna go to Nashville and see what happens?
First of all, let's not call it following Davis down.
Who's this Davis guy?
Yeah, exactly.
You gotta meet him, man.
If you put this on, like, if he hears this, like, obviously you will. But
I need to meet him.
Funny. Yeah, no, he does. He belongs in a room like this for sure. Yeah, he has the gift of gab, no doubt.
So you came down on your own accord.
I did. I mean, it was like, it was terrifying. I mean, I wrote a track about it way after the fact. Like packing my bags, my mom was crying, a little shake in my legs, but I feel defined. And like at that point, I was like, I am kind of freaked out. And I had a minivan because I wanted to play music and I was doing acoustic stuff. Mm-hmm. Yes. So I'm a 20-year-old with a a Honda Odyssey, bro.
What's up, man?
I mean, I'm telling you.
And Sienna, then two Odysseys.
Yeah, still maintain the swag with a minivan.
Dude, what's better than the Odyssey?
I don't know.
Not much.
Yeah. Also the name of it. Yeah. I'm driving in the Odyssey.
So
So
good. Such a
I'm
great
packing it up, and it was perfect because I had room for everything. I could fit my mattress. I fit everything. It was packed out. Actually, this is hilarious. Like, so I'm literally driving down. And then another lyric is like, I got pulled over on 65, like going too fast, but they let it slide. I'm in a hurry to get nowhere because everybody's, because nobody's waiting there. I don't know what I said, but I got pulled over by a cop in Indiana, and I was going very fast because the speed limit changes if you know that part of that drive from Wisconsin. You're like, well, why is this 55? And he pulls me over. This is real life, and he's like, let me get this straight. He takes my ID, goes up, comes back, sees my Packer helmet, like my memorabilia in the minivan, and he's like, let me get this straight. You're 20 years old and you're driving a minivan. And I was
the
like,
cop is giving you shit about driving a
blasting
minivan.
me. And I was like, well, I'm like, yeah. But also I was like, he's not giving me a ticket. Like he's obviously a chiller, and like so funny. But like that was the beginning of that whole, and back and forth a million times if you've done like on that same stretch. And to this day, I've never sped in that certain area. But yeah, it's I don't even know. I don't know where we were going, but that was a funny ass story.
So you get to Nashville, and I mean, from me looking on, you've always just had the ability to put out this wicked cool music. Mm-hmm. Like I think it's gone through several different iterations at this point, but Luthi is kind of where it settled and ended. Yeah. And I remember hearing you put out music, and when I was still in college, and it just being wicked cool.
Yeah.
Like unlike anything that I was hearing coming out, not country at all, just this really cool vibe to it. And can you explain how you got into that project and how it started and just kind of the life of that project?
It was, I think in the beginning, I was always playing acoustic stuff, acoustically driven stuff, and I've been writing since I was like, I don't know, 12. So it took me a solid decade. I think at 20, I finally wrote something that I'm like, I want to share this with someone. And it was pretty largely driven acoustically. And then when I moved in with Davis, I met Ivy, who is our MD and just an unreal guitarist, unreal musician, played bass with us as well. Like, and then I met DeRosa and Kraft and our bud we call Boots, and we started to play these songs as a whole, and I wrote a few, and then it was kind of funny, speaking of like, we got in with David LaBriere, who had played a bunch with John Mayer, and it was like the biggest like learning experience, just learning from that dude, and we were, peanuts at that point, and we went over there and recorded, and that started, and like the first real gig we did, or at least the first like massive awesome show, was at Mercy Lounge, which I guess is not, I don't even know if it's not there anymore.
Yeah, or it is, and they've changed it.
Everything's called Hattie B's.
Yeah,
yeah.
Exactly.
God, yeah.
So we went there for what was called 8 off 8th. So you had to work up 3 songs, and at that point we had 3 songs, and we had like some other. At that point it was different players. I think my buddy Shyrock, who's a producer with us, and Wes that plays with Moon Taxi, and Chris Plank that. Anyway, just great musicians. And I remember talking to, and I'll credit him too, Joe Copeland. And I'm sitting there at the spot, and I'm like, we don't know what to like call ourselves, because at that point we were just like trying to develop. I don't know. I had a bunch of aliases and whatever, and we always called it Luthi Rehearsal. So he was like, dude, just call it Luthi. And I was like, sick. It makes everything easy. So we got into kind of that mode, and then we cut our teeth at Acme, which was kind of where we could try out different players and work everything up. And then we went on the road and played a bunch of spots throughout the Southeast and out West. We didn't get up to like Northwest or New York. We had some stuff, like ideas, about that happening eventually. But yeah, I mean, we crushed the Southeast and played a bunch of major festivals and had a blast. So
yeah, and you guys were unique because you had horns.
Yeah,
like, it was like a real like funk. I don't even know that that's the right word for it. Like it's just so unique and cool, and so it's like super. Not unusual, but like nobody's taking horns on the road right now.
Yeah.
And you were touring with that. How long did you tour with that for on the road?
I don't know. I always say like 5 years. I don't know. Everything's a time warp. But it was interesting. Like, I mean, yeah, because your question was probably more than me giving you the rundown. I was like, it is kind of nuts because we never dug into country because I never grew up listening to that. I mean, we grew up listening to Talking Heads, Rolling Stones, Bob Marley. I mean, everything across the board. We grew up in the Midwest.
Yeah.
I don't think I even knew who Johnny Cash was
I didn't.
until I moved here. Yeah.
You read my mail, bro. Tell my story.
So it's just like that was the thing, and I wanted to do what I wanted to do without... And it eventually, it really worked, but it was weird at that time. There was no one like, it was weird. There wasn't it wasn't funky tonks and like there wasn't a huge jazz scene or I think of like the jam at like Inglewood Lounge, and there's so many jazz oriented musicians now that have that skill set, and a lot of that wasn't happening at that point.
Yeah, I know there's some different stuff up at D's. So now there's some spots in the city where it was welcoming to that. I remember Acme really being the first one that wasn't like country.
It was very interesting, and it was trippy for us because like to segue as well, like I kind of cut my teeth from a real estate platform with property managing a couple Airbnbs for my folks. And one was downtown on 2nd Ave. And then another one was on Hillview up kind of this way in what I guess is like Melrose, but borderline 12 South. And so we had parking. Yeah. So I was able to like come into what we call the Bat Cave, which was under this building on 2nd Ave, which has since been blown up, actually, which is a whole different story. Still rebuilding it. It's taken them like 5 years. And we would park down in the Batcave, bring all our gear there, which is a huge pain if you're playing downtown. Like that's the most insane part of it. And that was just super cool. So it was like, and if the unit was vacant on whatever night, we got to go back there and party a bit. Like, it was fun.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. You mentioned managing properties for your parents before you even got your real estate license. How many Airbnbs did your parents have down
my folks had a couple, and I helped some other folks earlier on, kind of. I don't know. That was the beginning of the Wild Wild West. Like it was like we didn't discuss permitting. Like there was no one knew what the hell. Like it was insane. We were renting places that we were renting. It was kind of sick.
Yeah.
Like everyone was like, making a ton of
arbitrage.
money. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, nobody's paying taxes.
Yeah, now there's a name for it anyway. Don't call me out.
There wasn't a name for
it. Yeah. And I don't know. I learned a lot. Like I just knew that it was something that was also super fun. Like managing those spots and being this virtual concierge for people who are visiting, especially from all over, not only the country but the world. Like you would be like, these are the sickest spots. Now it kind of like wrecks it because now there's so many that they're like, wait, why is our local spot like blown up by all these tourists? But at that point, early on, I found a lot of I don't know, like worth, or like I just really dug showing people like this is what you should see in this city instead of seeing what you saw in some book, you know.
Cafe Coco's at 2 a.m.
Yeah, and I was like, exactly. So
bring your leather and leash.
Yeah. So there was a couple there. I mean, I probably at some point, I mean, I was running 5 of them, and then half of the time I was on the road. And so I was always on my phone and able to like run the platform and stuff like that. But I think that was kind of the beginning of the bug for me to really work with people and understand, I mean, the industry of real estate, like period, without even knowing I was like getting involved in it.
Yeah, you were just managing properties for your parents.
Yeah.
And at that point, did you ever think that you were going to get your real estate license?
No. And honestly, I wish I would have, because even selling, one property a year would have been glorious.
Yeah, more money than we were making playing music.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. Exactly. Yeah.
If I could go back 5 years.
Well, we did a lot of different, like it was like it was more than just their places. Like it was like if someone needed something to monetize while they were out of town or whatever, before everything got really like regimented, like I was like, well, let's do this. Like if you're gonna be gone for a month, like I can figure this out.
Yeah.
And now obviously like everything obviously is above board and we're all, following the rules.
That's right.
But at that point it was it was a learning experience. And again, like to bring it was like baptism by fire. Like you were like, I don't know. I guess we'll see if this works. Like, what's the worst thing that's gonna end up happening? Like,
you yourself bought a place in East Nashville too. That you've seen the equity like probably quintuple. At this point,
we bought a place in foreclosure again because my pops, used to build houses. Like, came down, we remodeled the whole thing, gutted it. And we essentially house hacked. I had a private investor on that one, and then later on I pulled a HELOC to pay out the larger sum. But along the way, I would live for free, but I had to find the tenants, maintain the spot, make sure that I was managing it, and we were cash flowing at that point. Our mortgage was like, I can't even bring up the number because it's gonna make people cry.
Yeah, probably like $500.
Yeah, it was like whatever it was, and then that money went back to the people that it didn't go in my pocket. So I was essentially like, by, I don't know what you call that, like opportunity cost or like whatever. I was living for free, but it wasn't free because it came with its own stuff. I had to vet different tenants. I had to work through, writing up certain lease agreements and make sure that stuff was fixed and make sure that everything was maintained. And at that point, I was 25. Yeah. So you're like, all right, put your pants on, dude. Figure it out. And but that spot in East was terrifying. We didn't have a fence. I saw drive-bys. I saw my first dead body over there, hopefully only dead body. Yeah.
First of many.
People who are coming to town now, like, you do not realize the East Nashville of today is not the East Nashville of a decade ago.
But we had a blast, and it was safe because it was 4 dudes and someone was awake all the time. So that was our security system. We're like, dude, why are you awake at 6 a.m? Like, you're like, okay, I'm just waking up to go to work. Yeah. But that was the beginning of seeing how your money can really work for you. And then with that place, leveraged equity to do a multitude of other stuff. Mm-hmm. Small debts are things you acquired, and then later on to reinvest that into, like, now most recently 49 unit syndication in Rossville, which is like the Madison of Chattanooga, like a small spot outside there. So I call it the piggy bank. Yeah, I call that first home like we're really making the money work for us, and it's been fun.
Yeah, so it sounds like pretty much since you moved to town, you were doing real estate.
I was dabbling, and I guess I didn't even think about it. I never knew that.
Yeah, it's you were doing all these real estate things. You just didn't have your license. So walk me through the decision of you finally deciding to get your license. And if I had to guess, much like myself, it kind of lined up with the onset of the pandemic. Yeah. And you waking up one day and you're like, oh shit, what am I going to do? Yeah,
I was thinking about this because we had briefly discussed, like, I don't know, whatever, maybe some small items that we were going to talk about. And I'm like, how did it actually fall into place? I think we all got really freaked out when the pandemic happened. And I'm not like one to rush to I'm always like, everything's gonna be cool. This will probably subside. But I also thought like this could happen again, like for sure. So everyone lost all their gigs, everything that they were doing. So my band split up. Obviously that happened. Very dark period of time. That iteration, we're still playing music now. It's just, it's different members, all that. But I was like, I don't know what to do with my hands. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I didn't want to get a serving situation or whatever. I think I did some like odds and ends, like painting or, other landscaping, whatever I could do to like kind of make ends meet over that few month period. And then I was like, if this is going to happen for quite a long time, I should get into what my bro's doing. I mean, my brother's like, he's like, yeah, don't chat about me, but he was a big inspiration. Like, he has a brokerage up in Minneapolis and he's been doing it for a long time. There was a startup fitness company that he was a part of, building, and they sold. And like, so I was like, well, I do have a skill set there because I used to run the painting business, like to pay for college. I was like, I'm kind of got sales. Thank God I wasn't completely removed from that part of my psyche, because it was like 12 years past that if I was to write a resume. And I just did it all online, which was insane. And I started to see and date at that point my now wife, and she was super supportive. And just, if I would recommend to anyone, especially with a brain, I don't know, at least like mine, like I wish that I would have done it in person, It was a little bit more strenuous doing it online. Like it was, but anyway, it ended up happening, and that's what drove me to that decision. Was I want to have a family at some point, be able to provide, and want some consistency, and people are always going to need a home. And I really enjoy it. Yeah. I was like, I enjoy this, doing Airbnb with these crazy folks, like traveling, wherever they are and guiding them through this. I'm like, this has got to be like that on steroids, you know? So parts of it are super fun and parts are super challenging, but, I don't know. It was like this. There was a day or two where it was an epiphany, and I'm like, this is something that really makes sense to do, because you're good with people and you enjoy sales and you love looking at houses. So figure it out, dude. Yeah. And it seems like real estate somewhat kind of runs in your family a little bit. So 100%. You've been around it for quite a long time, and that's kind of how I was on the loan side. My mom was a processor, and it's like, I never thought I was going to wake up and be doing mortgages for people, but I just had that moment where I was like, I think I can do this. Yeah. I loved numbers. I loved calculus and physics and all that stuff growing up. And so that part of it.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you okay, bro?
I know. Yeah.
What's funny is
I would set the curve on physics. Yeah.
Calculus, man.
Yeah. You were writing those English papers, working to write songs later in the day. We were the math guys. So
I don't know why I liked it. I guess I liked it because it always had an answer. There was a right or wrong portion of it. Like, you can do this is correct. Yeah. And there's no if, ands, or buts about it. And everything is so abstract in the rest of our lives. We're like, we're writing a song. You're like, oh, you guys think this is cool? And they're like, yeah, I hate it.
I've been thinking of a rhyme for Odyssey for the last 20 minutes. Like the future's in front of me. Driving in my Odyssey.
Anyway. So you jump into real estate, you get your license,
Let's get back on track.
Yeah. Come on.
Okay.
Come on.
We're having fun here.
Yeah.
And what did you find that the skills from your touring days and being a musician, what skills did you find that were most translatable into you diving into real estate?
Yeah, it's a solid question. I would say resilience, where it's just like you don't stop. Like, that's not really an option. There are certain days you go to bed and you're like, this deal is falling apart. I'm going to lose my mind. I'm so scared. And you're just, hopefully now, as we get a little bit further into our business, we have more stuff on the table, more options. Because one deal falls apart doesn't mean your life is over. But in that career, I mean, you get 1,000 no's before you maybe get a yes. And you have to wake up that morning. I mean, you have to be the one that says, like, you got this.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing on the road. If you were just like, dude, we had like 18 people at our show yesterday. And you want to just cry yourself to sleep because you hit this small club and you're like, today's going to be different.
Yeah.
You got this. Like, so I think that kind of that resilience, I mean, that's the word, really.
Yeah.
I can't come up with a better word than that.
Yeah, there's, especially on the road and just, I mean, even operating in music and in songwriting, like, the amount of no's that you hear, it's not for the faint of heart. You're going to hear far more no's than you hear yeses.
Or the Nashville no.
Yeah.
Which is silence.
Yeah.
That's the hardest no.
Yeah, that's the one where it's like, well, I just like, I think it's a firm answer.
It's a ghost.
What's the funniest thing is, like, you almost, like, you start to expect a no.
Yeah.
And so, like, sometimes I'll be making cold calls and I'm like keeping like track in like spreadsheet, and I'm like, voicemail, text, right? And in the midst of it, they'll answer, and I'm like, oh my God. Like, I'm like, oh, I totally expected that no one was going to answer this. And you're like, it's kind of the same thing musically, and not in like a self-deprecating way. It's just like, you're like, dude, I don't know. Because again, unlike math, it's an opinion-based industry. Mm-hmm. What is good? What is good? What is bad?
Yeah,
like, I don't know.
It's so subjective.
It's so subjective. And that was one thing, at least, if you can go out, do the job well, communicate with people, follow up, and maintain those relationships. That's something that is poignant and something that can not be subjective. Yeah. Like, that's not an opinionated response to that. They're like, this was good. He did a good job, and this is great. You know, music was and is still always every day, I guess, subjective.
Yeah. And I think even the people who are extremely successful at it still wake up and have those days. Like,
oh, yeah.
Why didn't this record do as good as the last one did?
100%.
Or why didn't this thing I posted on social media do as good as the other ones did? Like, it's that constant battle of just with yourself, and then just with putting your material out there and the feedback that you're getting from people. And I mean, again, you hear so many more no's in music than you'll ever hear in real estate. And that's where when I got into the mortgage side of things, everybody was like, oh, this is difficult and this is hard. And a lot of people are going to say no to you. A lot of people are going to tell you to pound sand. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I can promise you this is nothing compared to
that.
Yeah. And it's like music, for better or for worse, it's set my expectations for everything so low.
I was just gonna say that, where it's like, it's not, you don't want to say that in like any, like with any negative like connotation, but it's like, you're like, I'm gonna put this track out, I don't know if folks are gonna like it, and you're like, I'm gonna reach out to this customer or have this conversation, hopefully we cultivate a relationship and this goes well, but if it doesn't vibe, that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that having that kind of, I don't know, mellow approach to it has been beneficial. And it's been a learning process. Because the first year, dude, I was like, you don't like me? I was like, you know what I mean? Like, it was like a whole, like, it it was like, it was as if they told me my song sucked, you know, if we didn't really hit it off and start to work through a contract or something like that. And now, I just think good things happen. I mean, things happen the way they should, basically. I don't know how to say that any better.
A bad gig is like one sustained no.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. You said playing for 18 people, it's no for 4 hours.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas a cold calls, it can keep going.
That's true.
Yeah, it's just like, with that, you're on to the next one.
It's like one long no.
Yeah, it's that gig. You're just sitting there.
What's amazing, actually, to make that parallel is, like, you still have to crush that show.
Yeah.
Right.
Because no matter how many people, I don't care if 3 people are there. Like, I'm like, we're going to give you a show. Like, we're going to give it to you. So it's like, I think that part of that, I don't know if you call it fortitude or, you know, humility. Like, it's like you still are like, we're going to go.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, you're like, I don't like, again, if you set up like an event, if you want to make a meetup happen for like us to show first time homeowner or something, and we only get 3 and we expected 20 because everyone canceled.
Yep.
Are we going to give a different presentation?
No.
100% no. Like, we're because it's the same show, baby.
Yeah. And I think I've learned too from music and on the real estate, sometimes it's better when 3 people show up because you can make an authentic connection with them, as opposed to you give this great presentation to 20 people.
Yeah.
And then the second it's over, they all get up and they leave, and you have not shook anybody's hand, and you've not gotten to know anybody there. And so they just took all the information and they left. And music was that for me. Some of the best shows were those smaller ones where you would have an interaction with somebody and you would make friends. I remember there was this real turning point when I was on the road with Ashley where she got too big, where you weren't like meeting and interacting with fans anymore. In fact, you were doing everything that you could to avoid running into fans at that point, because early on they're excited about it. They're excited about the music. There's not as many people around. So it's easy to get to know and build relationships. Later on, like, it's everybody all the time and everybody's just trying to get something from you. Yeah. Like, early on, people are just sharing in that mutual love for this artist or this thing.
And I think that's kind of how I would love to have, you know, X amount of clients, but that's kind of how I want to run my business too. Like, from an intimacy level, I hope that I have other vessels from a you know, passive income standpoint, where I don't need to do 1,000 transactions a year, you know, that's an exaggeration, but like, you know, I want to have that one-on-one relationship. And I think that is what I bring to the people that I work with. 100%. I mean, I'm like, I'm here. Hit me up. Are you stressed out?
Do you show up with a guitar?
I'll show up with a guitar. If you ask me, I'll show up. I'll sing you a song and calm you down. But I was going to touch base a little bit on our, for lack, like a portfolio that we put together. Like, some of the things that I'm so thankful since purchasing our first primary residence that I'm super excited about is what my wife, Kate, has learned. Yeah. So before I even got my real estate license, we bought another place over on Shelby, Downtown Views. Goal was to STR it, learn this lesson. You can't STR spot if you don't own both units in the HPR.
Yeah, that's a short-term rental. And HPR is
horizontal property regime and Airbnb.
That's a serious word, regime.
So anyway, we learned that, and honestly, it ended up working fine for us because we started to do midterm rentals, MTR. I'm just kidding. And we had travel nurses, and it was amazing, especially in this city, because we have so many hospitals, university, tons of nurses coming through, and they were the greatest clients that we had. And so we had very little, because knowing from me, I know the work that goes into an Airbnb. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, we could have made $4,500 or $5,000 off this, but then we have all our expenses. We have possible wear and tear. Like, so and so might throw up over here. I'm like, cut and dry travel nurses, cash flowing $1,100 on a $1,900 mortgage. I'm like, this is fire.
Yeah.
And then fast forward a year later on that first spot that she got, I mean, again, forget the numbers because obviously it's tough with rent out there, but we're getting the same amount for long-term renters. And so we essentially went into buy and hold category. We're just like chilling, and we leveraged, because she had owned it for X amount of time while it was her primary residence, $100K plus in equity, and purchased another place on the Mississippi Gulf Coast.
Nice.
And then we got into my brother's company, Unbankable, and where essentially you're the private money lender, and we function like the bank.
Nice.
And so we have a rent to own client in Diamond Head, I think, in on the Gulf Coast in Mississippi, and then we have the place on Shelby, and then we have my place that I've owned for 10 years, which God knows what that dirt is worth. I have no idea.
Yeah.
And then I leveraged that equity on our spot into another 49 unit syndication with my brother in Rossville.
Yeah.
So on paper, it's like, yeah, we have 52 doors, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've really taken just kind of not falling backwards into real estate, but just kind of like always doing this real estate thing, bought properties, and now you've got all this equity because you've had time in the market.
Yeah.
I always tell people and clients, that's a huge thing.
Yeah.
Time in the market. That's where you get that equity appreciation. And you've been able to leverage that into a multitude of different things that are producing income for you.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
We can be cash poor, but don't be broke.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always remind my wife, I'm like, we're not broke.
Yeah.
We're not broke. We have so many assets.
Yep.
It's just at this juncture, these are the commitments that we made for our future. Mm-hmm. And I think it takes a lot of, it's tough because people don't think that same way.
Yeah.
A lot of people in certain, but again, we're like they're more risk averse. We're like, dude, risk, let's go. We came down here to play music. Like, who cares?
Right.
So you're like, I think like these homes are going to work. I believe in this. This has been something tried and true for all of time that's linearly gone up. Then let's put more money into this.
Yep. And if it doesn't work, I'll try something else.
Yeah. Or I'll sell the place, sell it off, and maybe we take a small loss. But it's like, I just think it's been really fun from our relationship standpoint to watch the way that she's grown, understanding more about real estate too.
Yeah.
Now it's like we're walking through the neighborhood. She's like, look at this.
Yeah.
They got a detached dwelling. Like, what do you think that costs? And like, yeah.
Yeah. And I noticed this on the few things we've worked together. Your approach with clients is always very investment and building wealth minded.
I think so.
And that's super cool because some people choose real estate as an asset to where they put their money for assets. And you are really, really good at walking people through that. And you have real experience of, hey, look at all these Airbnbs that I have done. Look at these properties that I've owned. And look at how I've been able to leverage this into this thing. And so you really do a good job with your clients of walking through, not only is this a place that you're going to live, but if you want to, you can really use this to make money
for more things in the future.
Yeah.
And I think it's been interesting, like they're just being able to run the numbers on stuff like that. If they want a short-term rental situation, or if they're thinking midterm or whatever, to have that background and that experience has been huge.
Yeah.
And then sometimes if I read their how much work they want to put in, and you kind of really think about their day-to-day, we talk more about long-term rental, buy and hold conversations instead of, I know the work that goes into what that is.
Yeah.
Despite even the returns. And do you have a kid here? Do you want a spot that you can crash at, once a month because you want to come visit? Like, what is the reason that you want this short-term rental? And or is another thing, a single family long-term rental investment, better for your earnings?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been interesting reading just have to really have deep conversations with people to understand what their goals are.
Yeah, and you're super relational and do a super good job at figuring out, especially on the investment side, what they're after, because I know I've talked to a few people that you've worked with, and everything that they're after is a little bit different, and you're able to, through lots of conversations, figure it out, deduce it down, and then hand it off, and then be like, this is what they want to do.
And like, let's talk numbers.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So that's awesome. So are you still playing at all, or doing any writing and music, or are you all in on the real estate thing? Or
we're playing, we play full band a couple times a year.
Yeah.
We were doing this massive gig at Basement East that was kind of just took a lot of work to put into and to bring all those folks through. But yeah, I mean, hopefully we'll be playing full band at least a couple times a year. And then I've been enjoying the acoustic stuff.
Yeah.
I just did an acoustic writers round at Shannon LeBrie's vintage spot.
Nice.
Shout out. And we had a blast.
Yeah.
That was super cool. I think I'm in kind of a little bit of a new era where that we'll continue to release music. I mean, we put out 2 songs that are full band over the course of this summer, and I will continue to always do that, but I really want to work on an acoustic album.
Nice.
And kind of just get back to the roots. I mean, like, there's so many songs that have been written. I lose sleep at night because they're not released. So
yeah, and
working on that.
That's funny to bring it full circle. I remember watching you all the time growing up. It was just you and an acoustic guitar.
Yeah, we didn't have 3 horns and 16 other folks on stage. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Well, dude, I think this is a good place to put a bow on this.
Let's do it.
And thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us.
Thanks for having me. Hopefully I didn't.
It was great.
I crushed.
Yeah, you're great, man. So yeah, we appreciate you and your time, and as always, it's good to see you, man.
Good to see you guys. Thank you.